if-then statements and deductive reasoning. We're going to do some thinking today. If-then statements are going to be statements that have the words if and then. So if this, then something else that comes after it. We're going to use that in deductive reasoning. Got the title? An if-then statement is called a conditional statement. It contains the words if and then. The hypothesis is the part that follows the word if. So it's the information that you will begin with. The facts, the information, whatever that you start with. Conclusion is what follows the word then. So it's the result that happens. The thing that is dependent upon what you started with. I guess you could say story type problems. We're going to look at just a sentence or two, not a big long story, but you could say it's more that way. We're going to make up some if-then statements and practice picking out what's the hypothesis, what's the conclusion. I'm going to ask you to give me some if-thens. They don't have to be true statements. Just a statement that has the word if and then the word then. Now the term hypothesis here is what you begin with. You use hypothesis in science also. What's it mean in science? The educated guess. Is that what you begin with, or is that the result that you think is going to happen?
It's the result of what you're going to think is going to happen.
I think in science it's the result that's going to happen. Hypothesis, your educated guess on what's going to happen. Notice here, it's the complete opposite of that. Here it's what you begin with instead of what you end with. Confusing? Maybe, yeah. Hypothesis is what you begin with. Conclusion is the result that we expect. So, if it is Friday, then there is no school tomorrow. That's an if. What's the hypothesis of what I said? Not the word if, but the statement, today is Friday. That's the hypothesis. What was the conclusion? Tomorrow is Saturday, or tomorrow is no school, whatever I said. Okay? So it's not the word if and the word then, but it's a statement that follows that. Okay? So think of an if then that's appropriate for school. If what, then what? We're going to listen and pick out the hypothesis and conclusion. Who's got something? If then? Ellie.
If today is Monday, then tomorrow is Tuesday.
Okay. Hypothesis of what she said? Today is Monday. Conclusion? Tomorrow is Tuesday. Another if then. Creative. If I wear boots, then I step in the rain. What was the hypothesis?
I wear boots.
What was the conclusion?
Step in the rain.
You got one?
If you mess up, then you have to erase.
Okay, if you mess up, then you have to erase. Conclusion, you have to erase.
mess up?
Mess up.
If there's snow on the ground, then it is cold.
There's snow on the ground, then it is cold. Hypothesis. There's snow on the ground. Conclusion. Cold. Okay? So it's as simple as that if you have the sentence saying, if something, then something. Okay, I think everyone's done with the notes. Right, and we did some samples and we identified hypothesis and conclusion. Okay, I'm going to give you a statement. Is that color okay? It's kind of dark, I think. Let's see. Okay, this one says, let's see, I will get wet if it is raining. So notice it doesn't have the words if and then in there. I will get wet if it is raining. Okay? How would you write that sentence? So it means the same thing, but has the words if and then. Easy? If it is raining, then I will get wet. Right. If then. So it's easy then to pick out hypothesis conclusion. Okay, how about whales are mammals? How would you make that? Make a sentence. No, it makes sense. And it would mean the same thing as whales are mammals. What's the hypothesis? What's the conclusion going to be? You probably have to add a few words to this to make it make sense. If there are whales, then there are mammals. Okay? Any other? I think I might have done if an animal is a whale, then it is a mammal. Same kind of thing. We had the whale was the hypothesis, the conclusion was it's a mammal. All jeans are blue. If what, there's a what. Okay, if you have jeans, then they are blue or they will be blue. Correct. All right, that was my last one on that page. All right, deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning is a thinking process that uses facts, definitions, accepted properties, and the laws of logic to make a logical argument. We were talking about inductive reasoning. What was that based on? Using patterns, correct? So inductive reasoning was using patterns. Deductive reasoning is using facts, definitions, properties, and the laws of logic. The logical argument. Laws of logic means laws to correct thinking. So are there laws to how you should think? Well, technically, there are. There are correct sequences of thoughts and there's incorrect. We're going to talk about the law of detachment, the law of syllogism, and the law of contrapositive. If you don't follow one of those laws, your thinking is not valid. It's not supported logically. Lizzie, you good? Okay, the first one is law of detachment. Okay, the first part of it explains it, and then I've got kind of a little more just explanation or examples. So, the law of detachment, if the hypothesis of a true if-then statement is true, then the conclusion is also true. have some other ways to explain that in some examples. But it's up to you if you write all that down. It probably takes you a little while. Maybe you can write the first part and then we can think about it. Okay, there will be, for law of detachment, a conditional, an if-then statement. If P, then Q. Just kind of using it in variable terms. And it also, we need to know that the hypothesis is true. Because if the hypothesis is true, and it's in a true if-then the conclusion has to follow as a true statement. So that would be like saying, if the number 10 is even, then it is divisible by 2. The number 10 is even. So it's correct to say 10 is divisible by 2. It might seem like, yeah, it makes sense. That's the logic. That's a correct logical sequence. Okay, how about if it is sunny, then it is warm, except that is true. If it's sunny, then it is warm. It is sunny today. And the conclusion would be it is warm today. You're not liking that because you're saying that first statement's not true. Okay, let's think of something that is true. Maybe I have to stick to math. If x equals 5, then 2 times x equals 10. X equals 5. So the conclusion would be 2x equals 10. I think of one that you would like for a true statement. That would be like a real life situation. Let's go to the statement I had before. If today is Friday, then tomorrow is Saturday. Today is Friday. So, if what? If you are 16, then you can drive. You thinking of something that wouldn't work, Tim? So maybe you can drive, doesn't mean you will drive. If we take it that way. If you are 16, then you can drive. Okay, and then if I said George is 16, what could you conclude? George can drive. Well, that's the type of detachment thinking. I have some examples here. If it is Labor Day, then there is no school. It is Labor Day. There is no school. Now, can you reverse it? Now, let's see. Does it work if I switch these? Let's see. I guess I'll cover it. If I switch these two, does it still work?
No.
If it is Labor Day, then there is no school. There is no school.
No, it doesn't work.
Does that mean it is Labor Day?
No.
It
It
could
could
be
be
Friday,
Saturday,
Saturday,
it could be
Could be
Christmas.
Saturday, could be Christmas, could be something else. So reversing it doesn't always work. Okay? So logically, you can't switch it around. How about if your iPod volume is on high, then your hearing will be destroyed. That is a true statement. John's iPad volume is on high. Conclusion?
His hearing will be
John's hearing will be destroyed.
Sounds like it's broken.
Keep your volume down. Okay, law of syllogism is another one. Law of syllogism, that's kind of a funny word. Syllogism. It says if, let's see, 2 if-then statements can be combined into one if-then statement if the ideas link in a specific way. Should have made that bigger maybe. 2 if-then statements can be combined into one if-then statement if the ideas link in a specific way. You might need the color-coded part, I guess, to help you with this one. So we're going to have an if-then. If, like P, then Q, then another sentence needs to start like if Q, then R. So this Q statement is the link between the 2 if-thens. It will be the conclusion on one statement and the hypothesis on the other, in order to link them together. Kind of like a train, I guess. The engine's gonna be hooked to the car is connected to the caboose. So in the end, we're gonna use the engine and the caboose to make an if-then statement. If P, then R will be our conclusion that comes out of it correctly. How many of you know the books, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? If you give a moose a muffin? If you give a pig a pancake? Okay, all of those are excellent examples of syllogism. If you don't know what those are, let's give them a little idea. If you give a mouse a cookie, then you'll ask for some milk. If he asks for some milk, then he will need a napkin. If he needs a napkin, then he'll need a trash can. Throw it away. So the whole book kind of goes through that. If this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. So if you summarize that whole book, you would say, if you give a mouse a cookie at the beginning, then he's going to need a trash can. That's the idea of syllogism. So let's see if we can create some if-thens. This one says, if you are ill on a school day, then you miss school. If you miss school, then you have an assignment to make up. So combining that, if you are ill on a school day, then you have an assignment to make up. So it has the correct pattern. Now watch out for things that aren't really correct to combine. If it said, if you are ill on a school day, then you miss school. If the next one said, if you are ill on a school day, then you go to the doctor. They both started with the same thing. You can't combine those. To combine it, the idea that is at the end of one sentence has to be the beginning of another one. That hooks them together. So let's try that on some examples. Got enough notes with that? Anybody else? Okay. Law of syllogism. If you go to geometry, then you get an assignment. That's true. If you get an assignment, then you need study time. So if you combine those, what's the if-then going to sound like? Then?
If you go to geometry, then you need study time.
Correct. That's the correct combined statement. If you go to geometry, then you need study time. If the battery is dead, then it needs charged. If the battery needs charged, then it must be placed in the recharger. That. Correct. I should put iPad on that. If the sun is shining, then the grass grows. If the grass grows, then someone needs to mow. That's what this one says. The grass grows was repeated here, so if you start with this one, if the sun is shining, then someone needs to mow. If the sun is shining, someone needs to mow. Okay, that's called the law of syllogism. And the last one is a contrapositive. This one has an if-then again, like if P then Q, and not Q is true. So this one you have to do some, it's called negating. You might say the opposite, but I wouldn't use the word opposite. The negation of the hypothesis, excuse me, the negation of the conclusion leads to the negation of the hypothesis being true. So if Mrs. Frank is gone, then there is a substitute teacher. There is not a substitute teacher. Notice how that's the hypothesis, the conclusion part again. So Mrs. Frank is not gone. Because what would happen if Mrs. Frank is gone? There would be a substitute, but there's not a substitute. So she's not gone.
So she's saying right there.
Yep, stand right here. And if I had a substitute teach this lesson, would that be confusing?
A little bit. Is this like reverse thinking?
But
Is this like reverse thinking?
that's kind of like reverse thinking, I guess. If that's what you want to call it. It's called the contrapositive thinking. So let's see if we can create some more examples related to that. So you'd have to have an if-then, and then your next fact would be the negation of the conclusion, which leads you to the negation of the hypothesis. Let's see. Would you go with this? If it is sunny, then it is warm. It is not warm. It is not sunny. That would work. Yes. You didn't set it up right. She didn't set it up right. Because didn't she have Friday as the hypothesis? Maybe you didn't say what you meant. Let's try it again. There is school tomorrow. That make sense? If it is Friday, then there's no school tomorrow. There is school tomorrow. There's no school on Friday, I guess. Be how it works. Okay, let's see. Or tomorrow is not Friday, I think is how I should have said that. I think I said it weird. If it is summer, then I am wearing sandals. I am not wearing sandals. It is not summer. Correct. If the dog is barking, then the neighbors are awake. The neighbors are not awake.
The dog is not barking.
Correct. If x equals 2, then 5x equals 10. But 5x does not equal 10.
X does not equal 2.
X does not equal 2. Does it have to sound that way? I kind of like the one that we were doing about the Friday, Saturday thing. Let's see if I can make another one. If it is sunny, then it is not raining. It is raining. It is not sunny. It is not warm, then I wear a coat. I'm not wearing a coat. It is warm. So does your conclusion always have to say or sound negative? No. It just has to be the negation of what you started with. All right, let's see. I think it says, watch out for these, okay? If it is cold, then my hands get dried out. My hands got dried out.
It is cold.
Incorrect. Incorrect. Why? Because my hands could get dried out for another reason. Using hand sanitizers, working on the chalkboard. So this was the order. If it is first cold, then my hands get dried out. That doesn't mean that they get dried out only because it's cold. So going in the reverse does not work unless you negate it. Now, if I said, if it is cold, then my hands get dried out, my hands do not get dried out, it is not cold, that's correct. But without that negating in it, you can't go backwards. Watch out for this kind too. If it is warm, then students wear t-shirts. If it is not warm, it doesn't mean students don't wear t-shirts. Right? You could be wearing a t-shirt for another reason.
So what would put like?
You would put no conclusion. Can't decide. So there are some tricky ones that do, you have to watch out. I've got a sheet with some sample problems. And remember the Quizlets have the notes basically for you to, okay? Let's do these samples before we take our quiz.
So are we gonna have an assignment side or is this?
Yeah, there will be.
I
I wouldn't want you to go with that.
Why not?
don't want us to go with that.
And watch out for those that maybe would be tricky. Okay, the first ones just say rewrite the statement as an if-then statement. I'll pause a little bit and let you get at least a few of those first 5 written down. Probably won't wait until everybody's all the way done with 1 through 5, but let's look at some of